Hey guys, Bike here, and I'm back again with another Last Epoch build guide video. This one is for the Bladedancer. So I'm calling this one Stab and Drag Rogue. It sounds kind of cool, but it's shadow daggers, but it gets the point across. You stab and you drag and you keep going. So I took inspiration from the Maxroll guide on this one, just a traditional shadow daggers build. So if you're interested in their build guide as well as the planner, links are in the description down below. There's a link to the Maxroll guide, and then there's a link to my planner. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. If that's all you're here for, please consider leaving a like and maybe even subscribing if you like what you are seeing. Thank you so much for being here. Let's get into it. So the gameplay that you guys are watching is at corruption 730. And before I get too far ahead, yes, this time I have decided I am going to create a loot filter for you guys. Link to that in the description down below. Thank you very much. So yes, the gameplay you are watching is taken at corruption 730. I do think it is a little too high for this build. The monoliths and the echoes are just fine, but where it's going to struggle at is the bosses. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the build so we can also see more about the echo gameplay. So you guys can see we like to stab, we like to drag, and then if we want to, use umbral blades as a filler here. Had a great time with this build. I started off very traditional, very vanilla with the Maxroll guide. And as I kept going, I want a little bit more something in this one direction. And somebody was like, hey, try a shield. And I'm like, sure. So I tried a shield and I liked it. So I got 100% block chance. I know. 100% block chance on a rogue. It is possible. And I was like, the dodging, it's kind of a cool mechanic, but if you don't dodge and you don't get your glancing blow, even with the shield, sometimes you get, knocked on the floor like a sack of potatoes. So I went for 100% uptime on glancing blow with 100% block chance. And yeah, the build started feeling a little bit better. I liked the way it felt. It didn't feel like RNG in terms of damage reduction. Now, don't get me wrong. You can still get crumpled onto the floor like a sack of potatoes, but this gives it a little bit more consistency. And, for those of us out there that are not the most nimble, it's a bit of it's a good face tanking build. It's not perfect, but it helps. It helps for sure. Let's go ahead and talk about those bosses. So we're jumping straight over to Rye. We were able to kill Rye at corruption 730, no modifiers. We're able to get through them. It takes a while. The ward, it just takes forever to get through the boss ward, man. It takes so long, but we were able to get through them. But the Harbinger, it takes so long. I would make a mistake and then die. I tried these bosses 3 times at corruption 730. It was difficult. And I've killed them before multiple times, but at this high corruption, without some fine tuning, we're also not level 100 with this build. Maybe need to back it down a little bit, but I do think it can be done. Nonetheless, had a difficult time. Let's also talk about Avaroth. I attempted him 3 times as well today. And all 3 times I got to right here, the final phase. Basically, the boss ward would take forever. The arena shrinks and you have like almost no place to go. And you do rely on moving a fair amount to be your damage reduction and damage with shift. So it's really difficult at this point to stab and drag, and I died every time. I couldn't get through the boss ward. We do have a kill threshold with this build, but it's at 12%, and the ward kicks in at 20% health, and it's just I'm not able to get through it fast enough. I do think that you can kill Avaroth with this build, but it would take time, patience, and a little bit more min-maxing, and I was ready to move on to a different build. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the game. All right, here we are in game, guys, and you're probably going, what in the world is that? Why are you using apostates on a rogue? Oh, did I say we're doing the gear? Hey guys, welcome on in. Let's jump into the gear. Well, before we do that, let me give you a little demonstration. So, stab, drag, filler. And you're going to want to use smoke bomb for more damage.
Not happening.
And you're going to want to watch your mana with this build, right? But yeah, stab, drag, keep going. Okay, let's talk about the gear. Let's start with apostates. Why are we using apostates? Shout out to Niche. He recommended this. I was looking for a bone amulet, and he was like, yo, have you tried apostates? I'm like, why in the world would I use that? The sentinel item? He's like, well, look at the last affix. You can get anywhere from 6 to 14% more damage. And I'm like, well, that's a good modifier. Is there any multiplier? Is there anything else about it? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, let me look at this. I'm like, oh, well, it actually gives vitality, and then it gives health scaling to vitality. So not only Void Knight, not only does Void Knight get the health scaling from their passive tree, but apostates gives health scaling with vitality. It's flat, so if you find one, you're going to have the max plus 2 health per vitality. So that means you're going to be getting 8 health per vitality. So with enough vitality, that starts to become pretty good, right? That's 41. And the more damage multiplier, it works. So what you're going to want on here is mana regen. And if you got mana regen, you're going to want to throw on critical strike multiplier, physical damage, or health. Take your pick, but I would go for mana regen. I threw on a tier 7. Yes, it is more damage. It is better than just throwing on critical strike multiplier. The more damage multiplier is nice. Moving on. I needed some form of armor mitigation against dots, so I used a Decayed Skull. You're going to want health, physical pin with Shadow Daggers. This is a T7. And vitality is never a bad choice, especially if you're using apostates. So yeah, Decayed Skull works. You can also just use whatever rogue helm you want. If you really need it, you can also use Eternal Gauntlets or use Eternal Gauntlets instead of Decayed Skull. Honestly, I would say having both is not a bad idea. But yeah, Decayed Skull was a nice little pickup. Gives you some armor mitigation against dots. You can have up to 30% on this one. I only got 18. Nonetheless, moving on. Let's talk about the shield. So yeah, we got 100% block chance. It's not coming directly all from the shield, but the shield does give us a nice little bit. So Bulwark of the Last Abyss, it's an Iron Glass shield. So 35% block chance. We throw on a max T7 block chance, so that's another 26% block chance. And then Bulwark of the Last Abyss also rolls block chance on the item. Excuse me, 3 different sources of block chance for one shield. We got a 19%. It also gives you increased armor up to 90%. I got boned a little bit on that, but nonetheless, if you can get 90% increased armor, yes, big yes. And then on top of it, we can get melee critical strike multiplier. So what's happening right now? If you guys have been watching going, hey, what's going on with your health? Bulwark of the Last Abyss causes you to lose 25% of your current health if you're on high health. When that happens, if you're on high health every 3 seconds, you'll lose 25% of it, but then you gain the Apocalypse buff. And the Apocalypse buff gives you 70% increased void damage, nice, and 70% melee critical strike multiplier during Apocalypse. Right? Makes sense? So because of that, if we go over here to Smoke Weaver, instead of throwing on critical strike multiplier, I threw on increased physical damage. It's a nice, lifts the damage of everything. Everything that's doing damage in this build is physical damage. So since we're already getting a nice amount of melee critical strike multiplier here, I took physical damage. Percent physical damage. It's the way to go in my opinion. Moving on. Wings of Argentus. So I threw on 24 vitality just to scale with this. Also, it gives us a nice amount of poison and necrotic resistance. And then on top of it, while moving, 20% less damage taken while moving, and 20% chance to gain haste for 1 second on hit. So if I'm not mistaken, the on hit is when we hit. So hey, Chance to gain haste on hit. I think that's a big dub right there. Let's move on. So on our Lyrakas here, we took T7 block chance. So T6 and T7 are the same. They give you 4% block chance. It's just the block effectiveness. So you can go for a T6 or a T7 here. I had T7s laying around because, you know, Sentinel. I know Sentinel's not the only one that uses shields, but I mean, let's be real. So T7, so block chance, block effectiveness. The block effectiveness is what you really want here. Also, you would want T5 dexterity, not T1. Nonetheless, that's what we got on Lyrakas. We'll talk more about Lyrakas in a second. So you can use whatever kind of ring you want here. If you need more necrotic and poison resistance or whatever, go for an ivory ring. But if you got everything taken care of, go ahead, grab yourself whatever kind of ring you want. Throw on T7 physical damage, or you know, you can throw on dexterity, or don't go strength. Go dexterity, go physical damage. Go whatever. Make sure you grab mana regen, right? We only got 2 sources of mana regen on this build, and believe me, I would rather have more, but nonetheless, grab that. If you can, you could also grab throwing damage minus mana cost, but I wanted the % physical damage right here. It's a nice little % increase. Top of that, block chance, dodge rating. These are all good affixes to pick up right here. You don't have to go for this. You can just grab throwing damage minus mana costs. It's a good pickup as well. Throwing attack speed, you don't really need that. So why am I using Siphon of Anguish and Shatter Chains? Well, because we're a Shadow Daggers build. Shadow Daggers scales with thrown attack and melee damage and physical. So physical, melee, thrown attack. All 3 sources. Shatter Chains gives us more melee damage per stack of Doom, right? Siphon of Anguish allows us to chance to apply Doom on hit. So with Shatter Chains, per stack of Doom, those stacks of Doom become a more damage multiplier instead of an increased damage multiplier. So you can have up to 4 stacks of Doom on the target. 5%, 5 times 4 is 20. That's a 20% more multiplier. I say it's good. Speaking of Shattered Chains, health and cleanse would be your friend. Let's talk about the boots. This is our only source of any sort of critical strike reduction. One for dexterity, movement speed, health. Citadel boots are great because they give you armor. They give you critical strike reduction in terms of damage. Highly recommend pick yourself up some Citadel boots. And then our relic here, this is kind of a dump stat. I just threw on whatever resistances I needed. I was going for the throwing damage. I don't even think we need the chance to apply frailty, but nonetheless, that's what we did for the relic. So that is the gear. Let's go ahead and talk about the idols. So you're going to be looking for physical pin with shadow daggers, and then either health or armor shred duration. I would go for the armor shred duration. We don't have a bow, right? We don't have a bow. We're not using that. I just saw physical pin with shadow daggers, so that's what I grabbed, right? So I grabbed those 3 and we're off to the races. The other idols are just health idols and resistance, right? That's all they are. Okay, that is the idols. Let's go ahead and talk about the blessings. So just like all my other videos, take what you want, take what you want, take what you want, take what you want. Take what you want. Let's talk about this. Critical strike multiplier is a good pickup here, but I would say go void resistance. Save the room on your gear. Grab void resistance. Ending the storm, same deal. You can pick up mana, you can pick up health regen, but just take the lightning resistance and move on with your life. You can pick up what you want here. If you're going the old school way, I guess you can pick up critical strike avoidance, but just take the all res, move on. This timeline, take the endurance, but if you already got endurance on your gear, just go ahead and Yeah, just go ahead and take the endurance blessing. Did we actually ever talk about Liraka's? Oh yeah, throwing critical strike multiplier. Okay, moving on. Back to the blessing. Sorry, I'm kind of scatterbrained right now. And the Age of Winter. Block chance, block effectiveness is your friend. But if you're not using a shield or if you already got enough block chance, take armor. End of story. Let's talk about the skills. So largely, the skills are unchanged from the max roll guide, which is why I really wanted to give them a shout out. The only thing that's really changed is Umbral Blade. So let's talk about this and then I'll breeze past these. So the way max roll has theirs set up is they go up this side of the tree, right? They have it to where the daggers just kind of sit in place and spin for a while. And then they go up here, they turn it into a cold because they're not really trying to do damage with Umbral Blades that much. They throw on some cold chance to just so you can apply chill. And then they take a point in Twilight Assault. I thought it was fine, but I liked, throwing daggers out there to kind of like fill in the space. And my chat recommended, hey, how about you try the explosive daggers? I'm like, okay, they don't return. You have 20% less attack speed, that sort of thing. But what they pointed out is when you hit, look, I only threw one dagger, but it applied 2 stacks of shadow daggers. So not only is it the hits while they're spinning, but it's the explosion itself. So what you typically get with this sort of setup is a more bursty approach to the Shadow Daggers application. And then if you're not able to keep up the pressure, you start losing DPS as opposed to just throwing the dagger out and letting them spin, applying Shadow Daggers over and over again. I liked this way against bosses. It's probably not the way to go. Honestly, we're probably better off going this side of the way. Nonetheless, I'm leaving this in here because this is how I leveled up the build largely, is going up here and taking the explosives. I would say the easier way is to go over here and just make the daggers last a while and follow enemies and that sort of thing. I like the explosions, though. The explosions apply Shadow Dagger. It's cool. I like it. All right, let's talk about Synchronized Strike. I haven't really changed anything, but, Shadow Dagger's on hit when we use Synchronized Strike. Apply some Armor Shred. We apply the shadows. The shadows then throw daggers with Shadow Cascade, right? You have a chance to apply Shadow Daggers from other casts, blah, blah, blah. And then we use Shift over here to apply Shadow Cascade. So let's go over Synchronized Strike real quick. So we have the shadows. These create shadows. Right? With Shadow Cascade, normally you need to be dual wielding to use this, but since we're using Shift to apply Shadow Cascade, we're able to benefit from this tree. And so essentially, we create shadows. With the shadows here, we're able to throw daggers and umbral blades and all sorts of cool stuff at the enemy. Right? Notable affixes you'd want to pick up are like Crimson Storm over here. Like I said, this is largely unchanged for the max roll guide. I stand 100% behind this. It feels good. The whole thing feels good. This is our physical shred chance right here. Yeah. Go with this setup. You can mess around. I didn't. Try the setup. Shift, invulnerable while shifting. That's a big one. Chance to gain more dodge rating per dexterity after shifting. Mana regen. You're gonna really want the dancing shadows, right? You're gonna really want the dancing shadows and the kill threshold consumed by shadow. These help a lot, and then just the mana refunds, that sort of thing. Moving on to Shadow Daggers. I already kind of went, not Shadow Daggers, Shadow Cascade. Kind of already went over it. We don't have to have it on our hotbar, because it's applied by Shift. So it was just recommended to have Decoy on here. I honestly don't really use it a lot, But every once in a while, you can throw it and kind of save your life. Kind of. Yeah, go with this setup. You'll be good to go. Let's go over Smoke Bomb. Same exact setup that Max Roll was using, but instead of having 5 points in Smoke Blades, I took a couple points out to grab Cleansing Steam. When we throw down Smoke Bomb, we cleanse ailments since I don't have it on the belt. All right, let's talk about the passive tree. We're almost there, guys. I'm trying to go quick. 8 points in Swift Assassin. Physical damage, attack speed, good stuff. 1 point in Guile, a little poison resistance, a little dodge rating. 5 points in evasion. Damage taken while moving, 20%. Very nice. Goes hand in hand with our Wings of Argentus here. And agility, haste on hit chance, 25%. Increased damage per 1% increased movement speed. There you go. Nice little thing. Haste on hit. 1 point in dodge and parry. You have additional dodge rating and chance to receive a glancing blow. I didn't need that much because I converted my dodge chance to glancing blow. So 200% of my dodge chance becomes my glancing blow chance. If you look right here, we are currently at 102%. And as we're moving around doing all sorts of other stuff with the smoke bombs and all that, it jumps all over the place. So we're good. We're good using that. So I only put 1 point here, and since we're not dual wielding, I took the point out of Twin Blade. Let's go over Marksman. Focus fire. You have additional dexterity when you hit a boss or rare enemy. You reduce its dodge rating for 8 seconds. All right. So plus 5 dexterity and chance to gain haste after you evade. Very nice. Let's go over Falconer. 8 points in Wilderness Scout, health and dodge rating. 8 points here. 5 points in Raptor Wing. Chance to gain haste, 10%. It's the more damage multiplier with haste. Obviously, we don't have a Falcon, so we don't care about that. But the 5% more damage with haste, I think that's a great pickup. That's a more damage multiplier. 2 points in Peltas. Gives us a little extra throw and attack speed and throw and attack damage. And 5 points in Fencing Grace. While wielding a one-handed weapon, we have a 5% block chance. We also have a shield. That's not a weapon, so it stacks with the shield. On top of it, our dexterity becomes a scaling modifier for block effectiveness. We gain more block effectiveness per point of dexterity to the tune of +2. Great pickup. Let's go over Bladedancer. 8 points in Cloak of Shadows, 8 points in Shroud of Dusk, and 1 point in Apostasy for that glancing blow chance. 8 points in Once for melee physical damage and throw and attack damage, and also dodge rating if we've been hit recently. Pursuit, increased melee damage, throw and attack damage 30-30, as well as 8% movement speed with 5 points in Pursuit. 4 points in Sky of Synthesis. When you create a shadow, you regain health. And on top of that, with the 4 points here, Shadow Daggers deal more damage to bosses and rare enemies to the tune of 50%. Great pickup. 1 point in Flow, 1 point in Rhythm for 5 points in Tempo. Skills that generate or consume flow. Flow is a mechanic that every time you hit an enemy, you generate a stack of flow. Per unique ability doing it. So Umbral Blades counts as 2 unique abilities. Synchronized Strike counts as an ability, and Shift counts as an ability. Right? To generate a little extra flow. I don't really invest a ton of points into flow itself because it's kind of a weird mechanic and you do increase damage when consuming flow. I don't care about that. 1 point into Rhythm because we're trying to get over here to Tempo. Tempo. Skills that generate or consume flow deal increased melee damage and have additional melee critical strike multiplier. There we go. I think it could be placebo. I think it does something. I think it does. but I'm not exactly sure. But this was my choice to put some points down here in tempo. I could be off on this, but I think it does something. I mean, compared to what I was doing before, I do feel like it does something. I'm not 100% on that. I'm a Sentinel player, so unga bunga. I know, that's not really great. You guys are here for a build guide. Give it a shot. If you guys don't like it, take the points out, put more points up here. I'll just throw that out there. 5 points in Blood Dance. Melee damage leached his health 5%, as well as an increased leech rate. So the main melee damage is probably going to be coming from your synchronized strike. If you notice there, 1 synchronized strike, full health. Feels good. Let's go back over here. 1 point in Silver Shroud. I'm not exactly sure if we're utilizing this since we have Apostasy, but max roll call for this, and I never took this away. So I'm going to leave it there because, yeah. 2 points in Asuvon's Pact. I would put the rest of my points once I'm level 100 in Asuvon's, but dodge rating and damage while at full health. We're not at full health a lot, but we do get there on occasion. Perfection. When you use a melee attack and hit at least one enemy, you gain a stack of perfection. When you receive a hit, you lose all stacks. So we do have trouble maintaining stacks, but it's not unusual. It's not unusual to be at 5 or 6 stacks at any given time because we can generate 2 stacks per melee hit. I do think perfection's worth it. Max roll calls for this. Obviously, they're using the dodge portion. I'm using, 100% uptime on glancing blow, but I think it's still worth keeping perfection for sure. 1 point in confidence, armor per stack, dodge rating per stack of perfection. We don't maintain it to the fullest extent, but still 10% damage per stack of perfection. I think it's worth it. 4 points in critical eye, 5 points in all in. Critical strike multiplier, less damage dealt by non-critical hits. There we go. There we go, guys. It could probably be cleaned up a little bit more, but like I said, I pushed this to 730 corruption. It's probably a little bit too high, but I think 5 to 600 corruption is very attainable for most people, and you guys can take what I've done here and maybe make it even better. Thank you so much for being here, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you for clicking on the video. And yeah, you guys take care. Bye.